Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Glad you all could join us today. I'm Joanna Lalikas, and I work with North Carolina Cooperative Extension through the Center for Environmental Farming Systems as an extension and training coordinator for the North Carolina Growing Together project, which I'll tell you all a little bit more about in a moment. I'll be moderating the webinar today and just wanted to thank you all for joining. So support for this webinar is coming from two sources. SEF's North Carolina Growing Together project is a 5-year project funded by the USDA NIFA, working to bring more locally grown foods into mainstream markets with a piloted focus toward retail, grocer, and military food service supply chains. The second source of support is Southern SARE, and we thank both of these funders for their support. Quickly, the agenda for the webinar. I'll start by sharing a bit about some research done at NC State University on farmers connecting local product into new markets. Trish Tripp will provide guidance on produce specifications and best practices for fresh produce. We'll have some time for questions for Trish, and those will be typed into the chat bar. And then Ariel Fugate will provide guidance on how to get PLU and UPC codes for fresh produce. We'll have more time for questions for Ariel at that time, and then we'll close the webinar and I'll link you all to an evaluation survey. So Gary Bullen with Cooperative Extension at NC State University has been over the last few years developing a program he is calling Retail Ready for Local Food. Some of you may be familiar with that. Gary is not able to join us today, so I'll be sharing his program briefly on his behalf. The overall goal is to provide information and resources to extension agents and farmers to help them understand different market channels, determine which market channels are best for which businesses via a manual of information and resources. And I'll share a link to that resource with you in the chat bar. There you go. So Gary has interviewed 87 buyers in North Carolina with a focus on fruits and vegetables. This slide shares the breadth of buyers that Gary has surveyed, from restaurants to distributors to child care centers and hospitals. And these are the opportunities that have been revealed through this research. Certain vegetables and fruits, broccoli and celery, for example, shoulder season crops using season extension, value-added products, jams, for example, honey, and some other items. So the next speakers on the webinar will get into some detailed guidance that can help fruit and vegetable producers connecting with new market channels. If you need more information on Retail Ready, this is Gary's contact information. So Trish Tripp is the wholesale liaison for the SEF's North Carolina Growing Together project. Trish has broad expertise in food safety, food defense, food security, sustainable farming practices, and public health education for food safety and prevention of foodborne illnesses. Her experience includes work in the wholesale produce industry, as well as work with one of the leading national growers and providers of artisanal produce to world-renowned chefs, developing seed-to-plate food safety agricultural production processes. Trish has a master's degree in agricultural and life sciences with a concentration in biosafety, biosecurity, and public health. So we'll have some time for questions immediately after Trish's presentation, so feel free to type your questions in the chat box as she presents. Trish, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Joanna. Good morning, everyone. We all know that all the consumers currently are demanding local products, and there's some of the challenges that they're facing as well. They are wanting to meet customers, and also pretty small farms, CI and Foster Cabinets, which are NCGT project partners, and trying to help them overcome challenges and communicate with small farms to see, identify what these challenges are. The wholesaler challenges are logistics and they're not finding it feasible to stop at the different small farms to pick up, 10 cases of product. So that is not a viable option for them. Shelf life of product, the quality of the product, they're finding just is not comparable to what they're able to buy from the West Coast or otherwise. So, obviously we need to work on improving that shelf life so that we can become competitive as a small farm. Grading, sorting, and packing, there are industry standards that the warehouse systems are designed for at, in these large warehouses. So if you can imagine, they have slots in the warehouses that are really designed for a pallet. So if they're taking in 5 cases of product, then obviously they want it to stack perfectly within that slot. It's just really hard for them to find a spot to handle small quantities of product. So that's an additional challenge. And then I want to mention too that one of the biggest challenges that they have is communication. The wholesalers are purchasing product 6 weeks in advance, usually 4 to 6 weeks in advance from California. So they're making these commitments. And if we have product available here locally and we're calling right as it's ready to harvest, then that's too late for these wholesalers to work that into their inventory. So just communication ahead of time and, talking with that wholesaler about what you will have coming available. Then if it's a new product that may not typically be grown in North Carolina, that's a really great opportunity to supply a product to a wholesaler that, one of their competitors would not have. So that's really important to communicate early so that they have the marketing channels in place. And then, let me back up. So I touched a little bit on warehouse space and how valuable their warehouse space is and how that affects their bottom dollar as well. Warehouses typically have quality control staff on board, and when product is received into the warehouse, this quality control team is inspecting all the produce. So they're looking at appearance, which includes color, size, shape, and free from any defects. They're looking at firmness, they're looking at flavor, they're making sure that it's packed properly to where if there is any defect that it's not going to continue to deteriorate. So here's an example of some, let's see, let me get my pointer here. Here's an example of some Turkish orange eggplant. And you'll see in the top left-hand corner some defects on this eggplant. You'll also see some different ripening stages as well, some different coloring. This is a product that is not typically grown in volume in North Carolina. It is a specialty product. So in this case, the distributor did choose to go ahead and pass this through because there were a group of chefs that were interested in the product. However, the chefs did send a message back that they would really appreciate a higher quality product. But because it was unique and special, they were able to keep that product. The North Carolina Growing Together project has just released a manual, and in this manual are specific pack sizes for the project partners, MDI and Foster Cabinets. They're distinguished by wholesaler and retailer. wholesaler being selling into wholesale via Foster Cabinets and then retail into the Lowe's grocery store chains. So I just wanted to point out that if you all do utilize this product specification manual for growers, that these are specific, and it's really important for all of the growers to contact buyers directly to make sure that it matches what pack sizes that they prefer. And they do differ throughout the industry, but 80% of the time they are standardized. And you can find this manual at www.northcarolinagrowingtogether.org under the producer resources. This is a screenshot of the inside of the manual. This is asparagus, so there's a page for each product. It will describe general characteristics, provide some harvest guidance, and this harvest guidance is focused on increased shelf life as well as food safety. There's post-harvest guidance, the pre-cooling methods, and here in this example we have rapid hydro-cooling is recommended. Some of the products have multiple cooling methods, and the preferred method is always listed twice throughout the guide. Washing, whether or not it's recommended. The size and appearance here is based on U.S. grade number 1, and what is preferred within the industry. And then we have the pack sizes, and we provide information on optimal storage, including temperature and humidity factors. So how does all of this affect what a wholesaler buys? Let's go back and focus on shelf life and grading, sorting, and packing. These are the biggest challenges, and these are the most important challenges. So if we can meet the demands of the wholesaler with shelf life and the quality, it provides the wholesaler more flexibility on how much product they will buy from the small farms. In other words, if their product lasts throughout the shelf life that they're looking for, they're obviously going to be willing to buy more product and more apt to establish that ongoing relationship with a small farm. Also, as far as pack sizes, if we try to train farms and teach farms what the standard conventional pack sizes are, then this enables a wholesaler to be able to pack that product out into that conventional product, even to a consumer that was not requesting local product. So it's less waste, and it does not affect their bottom dollar as much. We're all out for, customer satisfaction as our final goal, so these are all really, really important factors. So let's talk a little bit more about shelf life. The top causes of reduced shelf life are temperature, physical damage, pathogens that cause decay, relative humidity, and contamination. We can increase shelf life through temperature management. We recommend harvesting early in the morning while it's cool outside. The produce is also cool. It takes less time to pull the field heat out. Once the product is harvested, keep it out of direct sunlight or extreme temperatures. And then during transport from the field to the pack house or the storage facility, it's best to provide shade and not put the product, once it's harvested, back into the direct sun. And then also maintain a 100% cold supply chain whenever possible. This is really important right now. This is part of the marketing of a wholesaler, that the product has been maintained at a 100% cold supply chain It's very challenging for a small farm because they do not necessarily all have cooling facilities. So it's really important for them to harvest and deliver product as quickly as possible and keep it as cool as possible during that process. But there is a definite need for on-farm cooling facilities. I also wanted to mention here that when product arrives at a lot of these institutions from a wholesale buyer, they're starting to temperature probe the product to make sure that it has been maintained at an appropriate temperature level. And this is becoming more and more popular. Some shipments recently have been rejected because they were leafy green shipments, which obviously is a high-risk crop with a very short shelf life as well. So these products have been rejected, not being delivered at the appropriate temperatures. Physical damage. Fresh produce is alive. It breathes just like we do. It's really delicate, so it's really important that it not undergo any physical damage. You must handle the product with care to prevent any physical damage of the product when you're harvesting and beyond. And also it's really important for the farms to train their employees on how to handle certain commodities. Some are more fragile than others. Relative humidity. This is the amount of moisture in the air where the product is stored, and it's reported in percentage. So this is really important on the respiration rate of a product, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. But if you need to raise the humidity, you do not need to invest in expensive products. You can put a humidifier in, or if you do not want to utilize any more electricity or increase costs, you can place a bucket of water or place wet burlap sacks in the storage area, and that will increase the humidity. To decrease humidity, you can just circulate the air using fans. But again, appropriate temperature and proper humidity in the storage area will extend shelf life of produce. Contamination. There are many ways that we can contaminate product. Employee hygiene is at the top of the list, so just making sure that there is a hand washing policy in place and that people are following that policy. Contaminated harvesting tools and containers. The contaminants, one place that they live is in the soil. So they live everywhere, but it's really important when you're washing and disinfecting harvesting tools and containers that you first remove all debris from those, especially prior to sanitizing. So it's recommended that you hand wash each one of these using friction and then sanitize following. Another source of contamination is the reuse of cardboard boxes. We're not recommending the reuse of cardboard boxes. We do understand the expense involved here, but the risk outweighs the expense. So reused and properly labeled cardboard boxes are usually not allowed by most wholesalers and for GAP certified farms. Here's a picture of some strawberries that were received by a wholesaler, and they were beautiful when they arrived. They passed the original QC inspection, and this is what they looked like just overnight within a 24-hour period. This is gray mold on this product, and typically it's because the product was not stored or cooled properly after harvest. The cause of this is usually a fungus caused by Botrytis cinerea. And this is the greatest cause of post-harvest strawberry losses. We grow a lot of strawberries here in North Carolina, so this is why I'm using this as an example. Within 1 hour of harvest, it's recommended that strawberries be stored at 32 degrees. This pathogenic fungus continues to grow even at 32 degrees, but this growth at this temperature is very slow. Here is an example from the North Carolina Growing Together Project Specification Manual, Guidance for Strawberries. The general characteristics of a strawberry: quality strawberries have bright red color, they're firm, flavorful, and free from defect and decay. The harvest guidance is early morning harvest, harvest when dry, harvest when ripe, when fully ripe for best flavor, keep in shaded areas, and field packing is recommended for strawberries so that they're not overhandled. Forced air cooling is recommended. Room cooling would be the second choice of cooling. And again, I want to stress the 1 hour after harvest and how important that is. Obviously, we don't recommend washing strawberries. The U.S. #1 grade states that the strawberry should be fairly uniform in shape, a minimum of 3/4 inch in diameter, free of damage, mold, and decay. Shall be firm and not overripe. Each strawberry must have not less than 1/4 of its surface showing a pink or red color. Tolerance is 10%, 5% for serious damage, 2% for decay, and we have a 0% for mold. So 0 mold is tolerated. The pack sizes for wholesale and retail are both 8 1-pound clamshells packed in a corrugated flat. This is easily stackable and also provides protection for the strawberries throughout the supply chain for physical damage. Optimal storage here, we recommend to 32 degrees and humidity a minimum of 80 to 85%. Wholesalers are typically looking here for a 7-day shelf life. It's really important for us to remember that once a wholesaler receives a product, they still need to maintain that shelf life that they guaranteed their customer. So it typically takes 24 to 48 hours to get a product to that customer once they receive that in the warehouse. So this is why shelf life is so important. Respiration and shelf life. Respiration is the release of heat from the product. Respiration and shelf life are inversely related. The higher the respiration rate, the shorter the shelf life of a commodity. We're going to continue to use strawberries here for an example. At 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the respiration rate is 6 to 10 kilograms per hour, and at 50 degrees is 25 to 50. At 68 degrees, 50 to 100. So as you can see, temperature plays a big role in shelf life. Here's a great diagram or a graph that UC Davis had that I wanted to share with you all. As you can see, the shelf life is about, say, roughly 88% here, 88% marketable product. So after 2 hours, the marketability of the product reduces down to 80%, and then at 4 hours of cooling delay, it reduces down to 60%. Within 8 hours, the product is no longer marketable. Here's the summer squash from the product specification manual. Again, pre-cooling. We recommend forced air and room cooling. Washing. Gently wipe clean with single-use towels. A lot of the farms are using rags in the field. We don't recommend reusing rags and transferring contaminants. U.S. #1 size appearance, 5 to 7 inches in length for green and yellow squash and crookneck. Patty pan squash should be 3 to 4 inches in diameter. All the squash should be well formed, free of damage, cuts, bruises, scars, and decay. They should be firm with stems or portions of the stems attached, should be fairly young and tender. Dark green types should be entirely green. A dull surface and loss of firmness is due to water loss. Tolerance is 10%, 5% for damage, and 1% for decay or breakdown. The pack sizes here are 20-pound, 5 to 9 bushel wax box. They want stem ends facing the walls in these pack sizes. And then in the retail market, a PLU is required. If shrink wrap is requested specifically, and I know a lot of organic product is now shrink wrapped with a PLU label attached. Optimal storage is 41 to 50 with humidity of 95 degrees. I wanted to bring to your attention here that there's chill sensitive in parentheses. The summer squash is chill sensitive, so this bottom temperature or minimum temperature of 41 degrees, it's really important not to go below that for chill sensitive products, because you can then have chill damage on the produce, and that's just as harmful for the produce as not cooling it at all. So there's less than 2 weeks shelf life on summer squash. We're going to move on to grading, sorting, and packing. Let's talk about, I mentioned U.S. grade #1 a couple of times. Many of the growers just aren't sure which grade to grade on. There's fancy, U.S. #1, U.S. #2, combination grade of U.S. #1, #2, and the list goes on. It's very commodity specific, and U.S. grade #1 tends to be what the wholesalers are looking for. There is a higher value for U.S. grade #1, so the farmers will get that premium price for their product if they meet this grade standard. Also, the wholesale prime vendor contract requirements, these wholesalers are under contracts with institutions, military, whomever the consumer may be. In these prime vendor contracts, it's very common for U.S. grade #1 standards to be met. So if a wholesaler has anything that is below U.S. #1 in their warehouse when they come to do a grade audit, then they're at risk for losing that prime vendor contract. So this is another reason they're very hesitant to bring anything into the warehouses under U.S. grade #1. We are working very hard, to try to change that thought process and maybe get them to exclude certain sections of the warehouse from that grade audit. So we'll continue to work on that. So here's the summer squash information again. I want to just review the U.S. grade #1 size appearance again. It's 5 to 7 in length for green and yellow squash. Well formed, free of damage. The word free means it should not have any cuts, bruises, or scars. Also must be free of decay. Firm with stems or portions of the stems attached. Should be fairly young and tender. Dark green types should be entirely green. Let's look at the tolerance here. 10% tolerance. So 10% of this product, more than 10% with scars, bruises, decay, or whatever it is, it would be rejected for U.S. #1. It reduces down for serious damage to 5%, 1% for decay or breakdown. Here's some green squash going through quality control in a warehouse. As you can see, his fingernail is poking through the stem, so there is some decay going on here. And that's a knife in his hand. If he sees decay in the stem, more than likely he's going to continue to cut that product open and see how far the decay has come. We're going to do a quick poll here. Based on the U.S. grade number 1 standards, do you think that this would pass for U.S. grade number 1 standard? If you all could answer from your Dropbox.
For those coming on new, the polling option is in the participant window. It has a little checkbox in it.
Okay, for those of you that answered, that's correct. No, it would not pass. 0 decay is tolerated. We're going to move to the next quick poll. This is yellow squash. As you can see, there's some scarring. Do you think that this would pass U.S. grade number 1? They're very consistent in size. Okay, the answer to this is no, so that's correct. Over 51% of you all guessed no. This is too much scarring, so it is more than 10%, covering more than 10% of the product. What about this one? There is some size inconsistency. Joanna, do we have the results in yet? Perfect. Okay, so this one, yes. Those of you who answered yes, this one would be tolerable. This is a really fine line. It's probably leaning towards the border because of the 1% potential decay because of the scarring. Scarring does cause decay, so it will continue or start to decay throughout the food supply chain. We're going to skip through the strawberries here. We're running short on time. The lettuce is for U.S. number 1. I just wanted to point out that the russet and spotting is not tolerated at all. There is 0 tolerance here for russet and spotting because the degradation just happens too quickly with lettuce. Here's a poll for lettuce. Here we have some russeting. If you all could participate in the poll quickly. Okay, that's correct. This would not be accepted as grade U.S. number 1. And I won't ask you all to participate in this poll. This is a beautiful head of lettuce. It may be slightly wilted, but overall this would be accepted as U.S. number 1. The sweet corn, wanted to mention real quick that the cob must be 5 inches in length. The kernel should be well filled. And the length of the stalk must be less than 6 inches. So real quickly here, do you feel based on that information that this would pass U.S. grade number 1? Okay, that's correct, because we do not have the kernels that is needed. Size-wise, it's fine. Here's a stalk. We said must not be more than 6 inches in length. The placement of the ruler here is a little off, but do you feel that this would pass US number 1? That's correct. No, and most wholesalers like the fact that the stem is shorter. They prefer a shorter stem. So let's talk really quick about pack sizes. I've seen strawberries come into wholesalers in all kinds of different containers. So here we have from a basket, you know, I've seen all these come in this way. On the right, this is the preferred pack sizes in the corrugated flat. That's 8 1-pound clamshells. The summer squash, we mentioned 20-pound, 5/9 bushel wax box is the preferred size. So again, pack sizes are really important. Just wanted to go through a few key points here. Produce begins to deteriorate the second it's harvested. It's recommended that you maintain a cold supply chain to ensure that the product is kept in optimal storage conditions so that the shelf life and therefore commercial potential is maximized. Once produce is harvested, fruits and vegetables are still living and therefore generating chemical reactions that consume oxygen and release carbon dioxide and water. Treat them like they are living. Handle them with care. Remember that each product is unique, which alters many attributes affecting the commercial values such as color, flavor, and texture. Always keep U.S. grade number 1 standards in mind when packing produce. You will eliminate having product returned from a buyer. Always communicate with the buyer to confirm their product specifications at the beginning of the season. Buyers can change the specifications sporadically to meet current consumer demand. And most importantly, don't give up if you have a shipment rejected by a large buyer. Learn from this, making sure that you understand why the shipment was rejected and work on correcting the problem. Continue communicating with this buyer and ensure him and her that you have corrected the problem. Be persistent. It's going to take more than one phone call to establish these relationships with wholesale buyers. So Joanna, I'm going to turn things back over to you for questions. Thank you all.
Trish, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Folks, if you have additional questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat bar. We had a couple of questions for you, Trish. The first one was, if the product is rejected, will the wholesalers return the product back to the farmers, or will they just dump the product? Typically, what happens there?
That's a great question. It works both ways. It depends on the volume of product, but typically, you know, it's not economically feasible for the farmer to go pick up the product. If they know it's not marketable, then they may just ask the wholesaler to dispose of the product. There is occasionally a small charge for disposing of the product, but it's less expensive than the farmer picking it up. If the wholesaler picked the product up on farm, the wholesaler will not return the product to the farm, and you will have to pay that disposal fee. There is also a chance that you could renegotiate the purchase price of the product, so it's better to get something than nothing for the product. So if you reduce the price of the product, that's effective sometimes.
Great, thanks, Trish. Second question, will you elaborate on why washing is not always recommended?
Sure. Some products like cucumbers, strawberries, any type of berries really, they are already filled with lots of water. So if you add water to that, it decreases the quality and the shelf life of the product.
Great, thank you. Is North Carolina Growing Together sourcing packaging materials for small farmers?
Currently, we are not sourcing packaging for small farmers. We are in conversations with several groups of farms just to try to bring them together to purchase packaging in bulk so that they reduce their costs.
Great, thank you. Are producers still paid for the product that is under the QC thresholds? Example, if 10% squash is scarred, which is the threshold for that product, she thinks, will that 10% still be bought and paid for by the buyer?
Okay. Can you repeat that question, Joanne?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Are producers still paid for the product that is under the QC thresholds? For example, if it's rejected as USDA number 1. Example, if 10% squash is scarred, which is the threshold for that product, will that 10% still be bought and paid for by the buyer?
Okay. No. Typically, the entire shipment is rejected.
Thank you. Are there any good websites, resources?
But again,
Trish?
I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a little delay here, I think. I was just going to add that, again, that, getting something for the product versus nothing. If the wholesaler has an immediate outlet for the product, you could maybe get a reduced price for the product.
Great, thanks. Are there any good websites, resources for cool packing and storage equipment?
There are lots of websites out there. I know the NC State website has a trailer, a cooling trailer that is cooled with a home air conditioner with the addition of a CoolBot. So that's a great option. The challenge there is that, the further they're delivering the product, they can't maintain that temperature while they're traveling with the trailer, but it is better than nothing, than not cooling at all. So I would highly recommend that, and it's not very expensive to put together. There were some grants available out there. I want to say it was a SARE grant, but don't quote me on that were assisting farms in trying to help them come up with cooling solutions for their farms. Cornell has a couple of options. What most of the farms are currently doing is buying a storage building, cutting a hole in the wall, putting the home unit air conditioner that's recommended by the CoolBot website. The CoolBot is just maybe a 4 by 6 inch panel, and it allows for the home unit air conditioner to drop down to the necessary temperatures. It's a great invention.
Great, thanks, Trish. There was a question, will this PowerPoint be available to us at a later date? The presentation is being recorded, and we will post that to the NC Growing Together website. And for extension agents, I can talk with Trish about putting it together in a format that we can send to you all for your use in training. And we have one more quick question for you, Trish, and then we'll move on to Ariel. Will you share what you're doing with the group of farmers for bulk purchasing through the project resource information?
Sure. We can do that.
Great.
We can do that on the website. So.
Okay. Thank you very much, Trish. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now, Ariel Fugate is the NC Growing Together Project liaison for Lowe's Foods and the locally grown accounts representative for Lowe's Foods. In May of 2012, Ariel began working with Lowe's Foods, which is a family-owned grocery chain of just over 100 stores located primarily in North Carolina. Lowe's Foods has always sourced local products, but intensified that effort in the past several years to bring produce, meat, dairy, and seafood into the mix. As their locally grown accounts rep, Ariel works to meet new food producers and procure the very best local items. Ariel serves as a liaison for Lowe's Foods to the Center for Environmental Farming Systems and NC Growing Together project. In both roles, she develops tools to help growers better navigate the process of selling to retail outlets. As we did with Trish, we'll have time for questions immediately after Ariel's presentation, so feel free to type your questions into the chat box as she presents. Ariel, are you there with us?
Hi, everyone. Let's see. Thanks for joining us today.
Great. We can hear you. Thank you.
And thank you, Trish, for that presentation. I'll discuss two widely used systems for retailers, and that's PLU codes and UPC codes. Retailers use these codes for a number of things. To efficiently ring produce in the checkout lane, as well as track sales and inventory, and market products on the shelves. Being knowledgeable about these systems and presenting a retail-ready product can help farmers get their door in with the retailer, get their foot in the door with the retailer. The buyer sees that they're not going to have to spend as much time with the farmer, bringing them up to speed on their industry, and see this as an added value to that particular grower. I'll start with discussing PLU codes. PLU stands for Price Lookup, and it's a 4 or 5-digit identification code, typically appearing as a sticker on a produce item in a grocery store. It's based on a number of different attributes of a particular item: commodity, variety, and size, as well as production origin. The example on this page is for a greenhouse tomato packed 5x6. And the PLU for that particular item is 4799 versus a field grown tomato packed 5x6 is PLU 4064. Retailers can code these different numbers to different prices. This is helpful for the cashiers because they don't have to remember every price, and they just enter the PLU number on their register, and they're prompted to enter quantity or to weigh the item on their scale. This allows them to get the customer out the door quickly. Items that require PLUs are items that have multiple varieties, such as tomatoes, winter squashes, and apples. These are typically bulk or by the each items. Easily identified varieties like yellow squash and cucumbers may not require a PLU sticker. Later in the webinar, I'll provide a link that lists all national PLUs. Even if it is not required for your particular item, it can be helpful to use PLU stickers as a branding opportunity. Of course, check with your buyer, and you might not put a PLU on a yellow squash, even if it is a branding opportunity for you. But other items that, like tomatoes, can represent a great marketing tool. A customer who might pick up your tomatoes, might not be looking at the signs in the store, gets that tomato home, sees the sticker, sees the farm name, and they can return to the store and look for that same sticker. This will allow the produce buyer or manager to recognize that there's a demand for your farm's items. Next we'll have a case study from Gary Thomas Farm. They're located in Sanford and are selling to the Sanford Lowe's Foods store. Mandy Johnson of Gary Thomas Farms will talk about what PLUs have done for their relationship with Lowe's. Your screen will go blank, but the pictures will appear after the recording is done playing. And Joanna, if you could play the recording. All right, some of you couldn't hear that, I guess, but basically Mandy was talking about how the PLU stickers help them reach out to their fans on their Facebook page and say, our tomatoes are at Lowe's Foods, you can go pick up some there. They have our name on them. So some of the comments on that post included, saw your post, went to Lowe's and got a couple pounds, going back today for some more. Bought some yesterday, I was surprised they were in my store. Stopped by Lowe's and bought some Thomas tomatoes, too good. So you can see that that it presents a real marketing opportunity. Another case study would be Bogue Sound Watermelon Growers Association. Bogue Sound is an area in North Carolina where really sweet watermelons are grown, and in 2005, growers got together and designed stickers listing the PLU 4032, which is the PLU for seedless watermelon, and designed a nice sticker that says the Bogue Sound differentiation. The watermelons are known for being extra sweet, so they're able to use this as a marketing tool for getting in with large retailers. As I mentioned before, here's the link where all the national PLU codes are listed, as well as some sources for getting PLU stickers. And there are pre-printed PLU stickers that only list the PLU, and then there are PLU stickers you can customize with your farm name. And the approximate cost for a roll of $2,500 is $9. So you can see this is a relatively affordable way to market your produce and get in with a retailer. And that concludes the section on PLUs, and now I'll discuss UPC codes. A UPC code is a 12-digit barcode, typically appearing as a barcode on any packaged item in a grocery store. At the register, cashiers just simply scan the unit and are prompted and charged that way. The products that need a UPC are fixed weight or fixed count produce items. And some examples would be a blueberry pint or lettuce clamshell, a 5-pound bag potato, 12-count radish, and value-added products like honey and jams. There are two different types of UPCs, generic UPCs and unique UPCs. Unique UPCs are specific to your company and your product, and they can be ordered two ways, which I'll discuss. Generic UPCs are for standard commodity type items like pint blueberries, and those can be also ordered two ways, which I'll discuss. You can order unique UPCs through a reseller or through the GS1 system. The GS1 system is an international not-for-profit which assures globally recognized UPCs. A reseller is any company who resells old UPCs. Major retailers may require you to join the GS1 system because the third-party resellers may not be able to assure that no other company in the world is currently using that particular code. Smaller retailers may allow you to use a UPC reseller. The cost is very different, which is why people sometimes make the decision. The approximate cost for a membership to GS1 is $250 if you have 1 to 10 items needing a barcode, or $750 if you have 1 to 100 items needing a barcode, plus an annual renewal fee. Alternatively, through a reseller, the cost for one UPC is about $7, plus the cost of printing the codes. If you choose to purchase from a UPC reseller, they will send you the UPC image as a JPEG file, which you can use to work onto your existing farm label. Or you can order a roll of UPC stickers from that same reseller and apply it separately on the particular item. And these are two companies, and there's a number of other companies, and the online search that you can use to find more is listed at the bottom here. If you choose to purchase from GS1, they have an online tool called Data Driver, which directs you to download the JPEG file, and you can either work that onto your existing label, or you can also order a roll of stickers from a company that they recommend. And there's a few listed here. When you make the decision to buy from GS1 or a reseller, be sure to ask your buyer what they prefer. So those are the options for ordering unique UPCs. And generic UPCs use a number assigned by the Produce Marketing Association, and that number typically starts with 033383, and then the item number after that. So it'll be different for blueberries, grape tomatoes, etc. Examples of this would be a 3-pound bag Gala, 1-pound clamshell strawberries. And access to those is available for Produce Marketing Association members, and that's a $200 a year to be a member of PMA. Additionally, your labeling or packaging distributor may be a PMA member, and they typically allow producers to use the generic UPC on their labels or packages. So your label or packaging distributor may be able to talk to you more about getting a generic UPC on your bags or clamshells. An example of using generic UPC is Dewdrop Farms, who are they're located in Mocksville, North Carolina, and they're selling to about 5 Lowe's food stores. And they do greenhouse tomatoes, which they pack the second grade 2s into a 3-pack tray that has a UPC. So the cashiers at Lowe's Foods simply have to scan that through, and that is a generic UPC available through PMA. And if you're packaging produce, you will need a country of origin label, saying product of the USA, and there's more information on that linked on this slide. Lastly, I'm going to touch on a bit of a different subject, but we receive a lot of questions about this for growers who are selling to major retailers or major wholesalers. And that's around traceability. Major wholesalers and retailers will require a label on the case or pallet, and the minimum that's required on that is a unique lot number, farm name, location, product name, pack size, and the words product of the USA. And there's another note here saying the importance of associating that lot number with a documented sanitation break in your harvest or grading process. This will allow a smaller amount of total produce to be recalled if there is ever an issue. Many growers are using another type of barcode to help them achieve this traceability and log all that information and tie it in with their barcode. So this is a type of GS1 barcode called a GTN number, also referred to as a GS1 data bar. It has 14 digits as opposed to 12 and indicates a packaging level such as an item or a case, not an individual produce item. This is an example of a GTN number that you would find on a case or a pallet. It stands for Global Trade Item Number. And there's a link here where you can find more information about that. Your buyer will be able to give you more information on whether they're requiring that. And this can be confusing. The data bar can actually be stacked. So if you look in this photo here, this is an apple that has a PLU sticker on it. It's an organic apple. So it's 94131. But it also has the data bar on it. And the apple can actually be tracked back to the farm and all the other information about when it was harvested. Some retailers do use this to scan price, but many are still entering the PLU. So this wouldn't be something I would talk to growers about. I would stick to talking to growers about the pallet and case labeling. There's some additional resources for all the information in this presentation. The Department of Agriculture has a great video explaining more about UPC codes and the GS1 versus a reseller systems. Produce Traceability Initiative talks more about GTN numbers for traceability. I receive a lot of questions about companies that will print custom design labels, such as the ones you would find on a blueberry clamshell that have color and list the farm name. These are just some companies. Some are located in North Carolina, others are not. There's information on the bottom about what you can search online to find more companies, and these companies are well-versed in PLU codes and UPC codes and can help you work those onto the labels. And now, any questions anyone has?
Thank you, Ariel, so much. That was very helpful and very informative. I've posted some things in the chat bar that will get you to the resources that include the links that are in Ariel's presentation. I see here, Ariel, we have one question for you. Which of the label companies are in North Carolina?
That's a great question. I should have listed their locations. I know that Wayne Trademark is in High Point. I believe Growers Discount Labels is also in the state.
Thanks, Ariel. Are there any other questions for Ariel? Okay, great. So I'll open it up again to questions for Ariel and Trish. If there are any other questions for Trish, we'd be happy to take those as well. Trish has added a note that print marketing is located in Asheville, and she's found them great to work with. Okay, I don't see any additional questions in the chat bar, so I'll move on. Just quickly wanted to point you to the North Carolina Growing Together website. If you go to that website, you'll see a link for resources and a drop-down menu for producers. And as you can see, at the top is one of the documents that we were referencing in this webinar today, the wholesale and retail product specifications. If you scroll down, you'll also see Ariel's document on PLU and UPC codes at that location, as well as a number of other resources there for you and for producers. You'll also see resources for buyers, retailers, research, and other tools there. Thank you all for being with us today. We appreciate your attention and all your great questions. Hope you have a great rest of your day.